Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy you're all here as well. I think it was a very long day, or 2 long days. As an introduction, so I'm a researcher, and I'm a philosopher and a media scholar, so my presentation might be a bit different from the other ones. I will not actually talk so much about AI as a technology, but I try, at least I will try, to bring closer to you the relationship between innovation and feminist AI. And when I say feminist AI, then of course it's a research term and one can look into more theories, but in general I mean AI that is of course including female persons, but also in general more fair. So it is an AI that is inclusive to various groups, not just for women, but actually of society. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly to many of you at least, who are innovators, you might also have noticed that innovation is quite male, and so is AI. So both fields in general, but also in the tech field especially, are very male-dominated, or if not just male-dominated, then also Western-dominated or white. And I hope I can bring up a few aspects and give you an overview on how to change that or how to see those things in connection. A bit on my background maybe, so just for the context, I work at the University of Vienna and University of Economics and Business in Prague, and I do lead projects with data scientists, so I'm not just a philosopher, I also work very closely with the data sciences, and one is on well, LLMs, we don't really say that anymore, but our funding was still saying LLMs, and now everyone talks about generative AI. And the other one is on the European Digital Identity Wallet. I'm not sure you heard of that yet. It's a huge decentral system. Actually, even in Europe, no one really talks about it. It's still a bit under the radar, but it's going to be a very big decentralized system managing people's identities throughout different national states, and it's going to be a huge challenge. So my work will be to explore the trust relations. Can we trust? Should we trust? How does trust work, actually, in so complex systems? But let me start now with the presentation. Oh, classic mistake. So I have a quote, a bit of a provocative one at the beginning, which is about a conflict I very briefly mentioned, between feminist AI and innovation. So if you either want to do very good innovation, it should actually be feminist, but it's not really. So a colleague of mine, Louis, says, because there is so much money to be made in AI innovation, we allow AI engineers to disregard social harms in ways that we would never let a civil engineer get away with. So what does it mean? Of course, it's a very critical quote, but there's a certain tendency we observe in researching different technologies, also throughout time. Like I've worked on robots, I've worked on the internet, digital platforms, and so on and so forth, and now AI is the new thing. That AI does get away with a bit more things, it's true. And one of the aspects is because it's so quick. Everything happens so unbelievably fast. And at least now it's also popular, it's in the media, so even now the general population knows about it or uses it, as we know with chatbots. But of course, AI research has been around for many, many years, and it's very closely linked to robotics or to algorithmic studies. And it depends who you talk to, but there are certain tendencies that I know that especially people who program or developers don't call it AI anymore because they found the term too slippery these days and not anymore saying so much. So basically AI is a bit of the popular term for the general description that also leads to a hype. And if you really program, then you talk either about neural networks or machine learning. We had that today as well, actually, the discussion, what is AI, is it machine learning? And the question is, why does AI get away with a few things? And can we link it to why innovation is actually also getting away with a few aspects? Oh, now it actually worked. So there is a foundation in the UK I can only recommend if you're interested on like research on female innovation. Look it up, they have a great report, and I just picked a very teeny tiny part of it. But it is about gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes and as a problem actually for innovation. And I'm not sure I have to tell many of you what problems there are, but these are just the numbers and the data. In asking, for instance, female entrepreneurs, 70% say that gender stereotypes have negatively affected their business or their work or even identity as an entrepreneur. So even this is still, so not even going to AI. There's even so many other things before you come to the very technology that might make it so much harder to be even in technology as a woman. By the way, it's absolutely the same in academia. So there's, I can tell you also more about that if you're interested in many businesses. And now everything linked to technology is considered male in general. Then 6 in 10 women say they believe that gender stereotypes impact their business growth and how seriously they've been taking as business owners. So basically, to keep in mind, it takes women more effort to make the same results. And these efforts should actually be qualified as making them better entrepreneurs. So they actually should be rewarded for that more. But until just getting to a certain level, it's already hard. And of course, the next one is linked to business too. And they have many different questions they asked in this report. So it's a quite interesting one. You can just download it online if you want to know more about it. I just picked those two. There's also other questions about the self-identification as an entrepreneur, because that's another point actually. Because it's not just stereotypes by men or by different groups, it's also by women themselves, how they identify as entrepreneurs. Now that went too quick. Yeah, the clicker is really, there we go. So now a brief overview, very brief, about what is gender bias and what is feminist AI. I've just listed 3 of, at least in my view, very good publications. If you're interested more into this topic, I have a little anecdote. So I was at the airport, flying here the other day in Vienna, and the Invisible Woman book was actually lying out. So it's very, very popular. So this one you will get everywhere. Of course, unfortunately, I guess only in English. I'm not quite sure in how many languages it's translated, but it's very, I would say, understandable. So it's not like too academic. The other ones are a bit more academic, but my intention here is to just give you a bit of an overview that the topic is very much explored at the moment. And it's, thank God, it's growing. It's becoming bigger and bigger. So people exploring AI and AI ethics, which is a field also I am in, are very much interested in how to make more feminist approaches. Now, this is not only to make women more powerful, but also to make AI better. So we have to see these kind of technologies always in relation. It's not either or. It's not you have feminist AI and then you cut down on certain things, or you have the good AI functioning and then it doesn't, it's not ethical. There is no either or, because I see this discussion often, that we have either functioning, either good innovation, either lots of money, or good, fair, better. But then it's kind of always a bit maybe not that good, in efficiency terms. And we have to get away from these kind of thinking. The main part now is, why is AI at the moment maybe not feminist? What could be the problem? I guess we heard it a few times. It's very often data sets. This is true. Women are not represented, or different groups. Pick one, It's not, so many are missing. But there's another thing, and I think this is absolutely crucial for innovation. Women are not at the table to design AI. So the teams and how teams are constituted, that's why it's so important that women are innovating or doing tech, because they have to sit at the table. Because if you're not at the table, it's just easier to forget you exist in society. This is how many mistakes were made at the beginning, also with programming certain apps, where they had certain functions in there, and suddenly the male, of course, exclusively male teams figured out, oh, oops, okay, they don't work for women, because there was no woman at the table. Tradition, history, we heard that too. Maybe the dilemma with historic data. If you use old data, you're going to represent and multiply the already existing bias. That's there. And political economic structures are not always in support of this. I don't know how it is in Armenia. I hope better. But in Europe now things are changing a little bit. Of course, the big AI Act is now reinforcing certain things, but also funding. So I can see it now in my area, that funding by female innovators is being specifically pushed forward. Also grants are being given specifically to teams that have women in them. That's not the full solution, of course. That's not the full solution because you cannot just do that, but it's a good, it's a good start. It's a good beginning. Now, the problem though with biases in AI, and by the way, some of you who are actually maybe developers know that there's a difference between bias and discrimination, because bias is just very often an informational process, like selecting which information do you put into your data set. This does not have to be discriminatory. No. Bias just means you have to select a certain instruction to the system. But the problem is when it's that bias that it leads to systemic discrimination of a certain group, while maybe the technology is not made to exclude this group. And we have, I guess, the example of who's being represented when you look for teacher or academic. We had that, and you know that all. I guess all of you who use image generating software might have bumped into these kind of things. Also, who's popping out when you look for a flight attendant. But there's also another thing. I don't know if you heard about the scandal very recently with Scarlett Johansson and her voice being used for the voice assistant of OpenAI and the new chat GPT model. I'm not going to go too much into depth, but for us ethicists, it's of course a very interesting case because it's about whose voice matter. And in this case, it mattered and it didn't matter at the same time. And this is very often the case. Even if women are represented, one has to be very careful how. When they're invisible, one has to be careful why. So it's not always either or. It's a bit of a different thing. Because female voices are very often, for instance, preferred for assistants, like in robots, for instance. For a long time, females were very represented there because the robots were made female. But it doesn't mean that they were respectful or that female engineers could contribute to them. Also, this idea about the caring female voice was, of course, very much used here. Now, Scarlett Johansson is a very famous person, so she could sue. But in the case of, for instance, deepfake technology and all the different, and there are endless cases in which women are being abused with porn videos made by them, with their pictures, there's not so much they can do. One thing I know now is that Google tries to change their search optimization system, but actually, it's not really happening. So, but that's why deepfakes even, they're less problematic for politics, they're much more problematic for women. That's another thing, sometimes not really mentioned much. So, okay, briefly strategies. I mean, it looks like, well, lots of content, of course, but I guess the major points I have here, and if anyone's interested, you can actually also have the presentation. If you want to, just approach me. Is to challenge the norms and the biases there, but also to do things differently maybe. To not try to run after certain big tech scenarios where maybe interruption is actually way too difficult. I think there's also a certain way of entering into niche markets that can be very powerful. And it doesn't also have to be always the biggest, most high-tech AI thing. I've seen innovation, great innovation actually, with less complex technologies. So even now we have this idea that everyone has to develop AI. Well, very likely you might not be able to, except you have all the capital that's available in the US. I mean, we heard that even before in the panel. Data is running out. Yeah, we have a data problem. There's a data shortage. Human data is running out. Synthetic data will come. That will be a next challenge. But also sitting at the table. Again, as I say, the idea of teams, of more people just being present, more diverse people being in different groups and present, very important. Now, some things are maybe a bit too hypothetical, the idea of what really pays off, but to ask in a different way, not just monetarily, because not everything pays off immediately in money, but it might still be a very good product and a good investment. And not everything is also extremely expensive, because we don't talk about it, but AI is extremely expensive. And a huge problem for the environment. And it's harder for women to make all these things. That's just something I'm not sure how to, just the challenging is the accepting and then the challenging. There's no way around. It's harder to get their studies, it's harder to get money, investment. It's harder to get money and investment for not typically seen female innovations. So that's another thing. So even the way women innovate is gendered. You're expected to, I don't know, make some nice, cozy app, maybe for caretaking or something, but not to really, do the hard lifting on things. And now 3 different, well, I would say institutions, but also companies, just to give you an idea that in the end, innovation can be also a different, can be, well, a kind of system of different things. It doesn't have to be necessarily only company-led. I can only encourage you as well to get in touch with research institutions, get in touch with networks. It's really important. So I'm, for instance, part of Women in AI Austria. We're a very, amazing network. Most of my colleagues are entrepreneurs, so I'm one of the few researchers, but we do help and support each other a lot. You could have heard of the DARE Institute, a very, very big one in the US, built by exclusively critical AI scholars. Some were at Google before, got fired for doing too much ethics, and did then form this institute. It's very diverse, inclusive, and so on and so forth. They are very powerful. They might not have much money, but they're very powerful. And this is a company, Livant AI. It's actually a company, data scientists, only women, and they're colleagues of mine in Austria. And they are very committed to the idea of making trustworthy AI and fair AI. And for them, for instance, is a very clear judgment call to say AI only works when it's fair or trustworthy. There is no, it works, but it doesn't work for that group. So it works for all the others. So I think if you change this mindset, that the only true AI or whatever application you might do, it doesn't have to be AI, if it works for all the groups it should work for, and not just exclude by accident 2 or 3, well, then it's actually really, truly functioning AI. And I think I'm also perfect in time. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.